Welcome to 24 KEIRUS. I'm Kelly Johnson, the founder of KEIRUS by KJE, and today we're continuing our behind-the-scenes look at what it means to transform workplace cultures with the leadership team of KEIRUS. So we've got Annalise Alamo, our culture transformation leader, and Devin Owens-Toller, who is our operations and analytics leader. So welcome back, Dream Team.
Yes. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun to talk about, what it takes to truly transform a culture. We've talked about what is culture transformation. We've talked about the mindset that it takes. Today we're going to talk about the barriers to culture transformation. So I would encourage everyone to please buckle up. Please know where your exits are in your vehicle or office or wherever you're tuning in. But we're going to go there today, and we're going to talk about what we have seen over the years as those barriers that impede or slow down, delay, diminish an organization's ability to truly experience culture transformation. So with that, would anyone like to kick us off?
I'll share. I've had probably top 3 or 4 reasons why, and it's not always at the fault of an organization or a leader, right? Because life happens. I would say reality happens. We can have all these strategic, grandiose plans, and I experienced that myself, and I'll share about that in a minute. But when life happens and reality hits, you just sometimes got to get the work done. And so the number one, or the top 3 things that I could think of is time, cost, and leadership priorities. Time is, I mentioned it in a previous series on, it just takes time. These efforts take time. It's not one of those things that you implement and then you get a result very concretely, because some of it is touchy-feely, or how the organization feels and the perceptions and things like that. That takes time, and sometimes an organization that is driven to go to whatever levels they're trying to hit doesn't have that time, which affects their priority, right? Because like I said, I could have a grandiose plan for my team to say, hey, we're going to focus on team building and leadership development topics in our monthly meetings, but then stuff hits the fan and no time for that. Like, got to go to execution mode. And I've lived that the past couple of years in the demand coming back, the supply and all of that, right? And so it's just, again, not to the fault of the leader or the organization. It's just we had to react. Organizations have to react to what is being asked from them in order to deliver. And then third thing is the cost, right? And so if you've got all these other priorities that you've got to spend resources and time on, lots of times your learning, your talent development type of initiatives, organizational growth type stuff, development stuff gets deprioritized.
Yeah.
Not right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just a reality of what happens when you have X, Y, Z things to do. You've got to prioritize where you spend your money. And so that's, I think, is a hindrance sometimes as well.
Yeah. And I think, that's probably one of my, let's just say a little bit of a pet peeve on the prioritization, because it's so short-sighted, right? I mean, I get there's times where we have to compress costs, we have to reduce costs. I get it. There's absolutely times that we have to prioritize and shift, pivot. I mean, we do that as well with our team and our organization. But I think at the end of the day, this is why diversity is so important, diversity of thought. Because you could have a leadership team that's like, we need to cut and we need to save, so we're going to cut training, we're going to cut leadership development, we're going to cut engagement or diversity and inclusion efforts. But there needs to be diversity of thought at that table to say, but what's the long-term cost?
Impact.
Right? I wish I could remember. I'm pretty sure my grandmother used to say, penny wise, pound foolish, or it's you're getting a short-term savings, but you're actually spending more later down the road.
Yes.
And so I think finding that balance of, we may not be able to spend as much money as we wanted to spend on talent development or diversity and inclusion, but let's focus and let's find the areas that are going to give us the maximum results and impact with the limited resources that we might have now, so that later we can come back and augment what we've been doing in the past. So I get it, and I completely agree with you. I've seen those same kind of top 3 issues as well. I wish leaders and organizations would have those courageous and challenging conversations to really challenge themselves before they cut a line item to say, well, what's this going to cost us a year from now, 2 years from now?
Yeah, because I mean, that directly impacts your people, and your people are helping you, respond to that supply and demand. So if they are experiencing that season of growth and demand negatively, then long term you may end up dealing with turnover in your people, which then negatively impacts your demand and your ability to respond to it. So I completely agree there. And I think another thing that I would add to the list is infrastructure. What we've seen lots of different levels of infrastructure, I guess I would say. But one piece is really having someone, at least one person, we prefer more, but at least one person in the organization that DEI is their role. They are getting paid to do diversity, equity, inclusion work, preferably a team of people, because it is a lot to manage 4 organizations, but having a dedicated central office that is responsible for this work, so that it doesn't get put on the back burner because of competing priorities and their kind of formal day job. So that's another kind of, I think, key piece is that infrastructure and budget. And, who is that senior DEI person reporting to? Are they on the leadership team? That is very important. Having that direct line to the CEO is extremely important to the success of the strategy and of the work.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how do we maybe help create more change agents in an organization, right? I mean, because ideal state, yes, there is a fully staffed, fully resourced diversity, equity, and inclusion team. But then, there's still only one team, right? And the idea is that it's the responsibility of all of us to interact with each other inclusively, to respect diversity, to look at decisions and processes or policies to make sure that they're equitable. But how do we create that? I love to call it like the force multiplier effect. How do we create more change agents in an organization?
I think you tap into and recognize who in your employee population has particular passions.
Yeah.
It's just innate. You don't have to force or voluntold, volunteer, whatever the term is, someone to do the work, because they're naturally going to gravitate towards that, right? And I'll give myself as an example. I've always been part of organizations that didn't have a dedicated, DEI or whatever, but I've always been passionate about, hey, why can't we start a, Asian American heritage? Because I'm passionate about that, about educating about that. And so I've just found ways as an employee to get involved and to make suggestions. So there's someone like me in every organization that has a particular passion. And bringing all those together and recognizing that they can make an impact to your organization, I think that can be your multiplier effect.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, ERGs, councils, even having, or I guess your council would kind of be your advisory team, but those kind of extended branches, I guess, and feelers out in the organization, because they're kind of, those individuals would be deeper down and kind of on the front line, so to speak. And have a firsthand account of what employee experiences are like. So really building up your councils, building up your ERGs, and things like that, to really be able to not only get a pulse from the organization, but having those influencers and those advocates out there on different teams and in different departments to be able to speak to what the DEI office is doing at the organization.
Yeah, and I think organizations miss an opportunity with executive coaching. Right? So a lot of times senior leaders will have an executive coach just on sort of general leadership development, but we have seen benefit when senior leaders have executive coaching that's focused on diversity and inclusion. Because a lot of times you'll have a leadership team that may not have a lot of visible diversity. And so there's this lack of comfort with, I may be a straight white male, and how can I show up as a change agent, or how can I show up in a way that doesn't feel like I'm pandering, or where it's like fake or inauthentic. And so I think there's a lot of times this tension or concern about how can I show up if I'm not diverse, which really isn't a such thing, but that's what people say, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. And so I think providing that outlet to really help people hone their craft. I mean, there's been a lot of one-on-one senior executive conversations I've had with people who may present as what we would consider not diverse, but their stories are so powerful. Their life experiences are so rich and diverse, where I remember talking to one senior leader who was a part of segregation. A white male bused to a black school as a part of his childhood. And I thought, wow, what an amazing experience, and how impactful could that have been? Because we often talk about segregation as black students being bused to white schools. We don't often have conversations about white students being bused to black schools during that time. And so I asked him, I said, well, did you share that story with your team? Like, who knows that story? Because that can really provide a connecting point and a launching pad for conversations that are courageous and that might invite other people to share their story. So I think just creating those safe spaces for people to open up, and even just have the time to think about, what is my connection to diversity and inclusion? What are those life experiences that really shaped who I am and how I show up as a leader?
Yeah.
So I think we're supposed to talk about barriers. Did we?
Our solution-oriented mindsets, we had to make it positive.
We have powerful mindsets. So
Yeah.
anything else?
Yeah, I think we talked about the barriers, right? We
Yeah.
talked about how, competing priorities and, kind of the long-term effects of that, and connecting the dots. So again, having that voice in the room to be the sound of reason that, hey, we don't have to cut everything that has to do with employees, right?
Yeah.
They're our most valuable resources in order to do the work. So I think those are the kind of the barriers, the common barriers that we just have to help overcome.
Yeah, but even I don't know that this would be a strong barrier. Maybe resistance is the word. But we've worked with a few different client partners that maybe in the beginning weren't all the way sold, maybe on the initiative, on the engagement. So maybe you want to speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah. Thanks for the lead. Yes, we have, and I think that's probably where I was going when I was talking about executive coaching, because we tend to take a very coaching, supportive, collaborative approach with our client partnerships. And I'll be honest. I mean, we worked with an organization who someone inherited the DEI initiative, and it in the beginning it was really sort of likely seen as, this is an initiative that I need to lead. Okay, it's important to senior leadership, so I'm happy to help. But I think through our partnership and through the work and the results and the impact that this person started to see, they then had that individual transformation experience that really lit them on fire. So this work in the diversity and inclusion space, it transformed from I've got to do this project, I got to do this initiative because I've been asked to do it by senior leadership, to now I want to. I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference for other people. And so I would say, just quickly, because we're just about out of time, I would say that's a quick example of how people, leaders can transform and move beyond that, this is the right thing to do, we need to do it, to I want to do this. And I see how important it really is.
Yeah.
So.
And Kelly may appear very, poised and nice, and she is, but she's also not afraid to have those tough conversations.
Nope.
So tell us what we need to hear, and so we can continue to grow from it. So
even
we're
if we
not
don't want to hear it.
Yeah, even if you don't want to hear it. Exactly.
Shh. Don't tell them all the secrets. No, this has been fun,
Yes.
and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Thank you for tuning in to 24 KEIRUS. where we believe that it requires a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion 24/7. We'll be back with more great content about culture transformation and driving diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organizations.